Morning fog enveloped the main street of Cedarville when Regina Morgan opened the door of the Main Street Cafe at exactly 6 o'clock in the morning. The ringing of the bell above the entrance broke the silence of the empty establishment. She turned on the lights and began preparing for the workday, as she had done every morning for the past 3 years. At 28, Regina looked younger than her age. She had a slender figure, shoulder-length chestnut hair that she always wore neatly styled, and attentive brown eyes that seemed to see more than they showed. To the residents of Cedarville, she was just a nice waitress who always smiled and remembered how everyone liked their coffee. No one knew that in the evenings, Regina turned into a completely different person. The first customer, as usual, was old Frank Miller, a pensioner who came in for black coffee and a glazed donut. Regina smiled at him as she poured his coffee into his usual blue cup. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. How are you?" Same old, dear. My back hurts, but what can you do at 70? Frank took some crumpled dollars out of the pocket of his worn jacket. "How about you? Still thinking about moving to the big city?" Regina shrugged, wiping the counter with a rag. "Maybe someday, but for now, Cedarville is my home." It was a lie. Cedarville had never been her home, more like a refuge, a place where she could hide from her past and slowly build a new future. Regina was born in Detroit with the name Robert, and the journey to who she was now had been long and painful. By 8 in the morning, the cafe was filled with its usual patrons: workers from the local factory, city hall employees, housewives with children. Regina knew them all by name, knew their stories, the little secrets they unwittingly revealed in conversation. But no one knew her biggest secret. At 10 o'clock, Virgil Clark entered the cafe. He was a tall man of 42 with graying hair and tired eyes. He worked as a manager at an auto parts factory, one of the few businesses still keeping Cedarville afloat. "Hi, Regina," he said, sitting down at the counter. His voice sounded tired as usual. "Double espresso, please." "Rough morning?" she asked, making the coffee. Virgil rubbed his face with his hands. "My wife isn't talking to me again. The kids want new phones we can't afford, and the boss wants us to increase productivity with the same number of employees." Regina set the cup in front of him. "Sounds familiar. Most people here live the same way." "Yes, but sometimes I just want to disappear, you know? Become someone else, at least for a while." Virgil took a sip of coffee, avoiding her gaze. Regina studied his face. Over the years, she had learned to read people, to understand when someone desperately needed understanding or just the chance to be heard. "Everyone has a right to their personal space," she said quietly. "The important thing is not to lose yourself in the process." Virgil looked up. Something flashed in his eyes. Gratitude? Interest? Regina wasn't sure. "You're a philosopher, Regina. It's not every day you meet someone like that in a small town." "Life has taught me," she replied simply. After Virgil left, Regina couldn't get their conversation out of her head. Something in his words resonated with her own experience, the desire to be understood, accepted, to be able to show her true self. Her workday at the cafe ended at 4 in the afternoon. Regina closed up, counted the takings, and headed home to her small apartment above a hair salon on the next street. The apartment was modest, a living room combined with a kitchen, a bedroom, and a tiny bathroom. But it was her space, where she could be herself. After a shower, Regina sat down at her computer. Several websites opened on the screen: Elite Escort Services, where she posted her ads under the pseudonym Scarlett. The photos were professional, but did not show her face completely. The description was brief and elegant: an educated companion for gentlemen who value quality and discretion. Regina started working as an escort 2 years ago, when she realized that her waitressing salary was barely enough to live on. She was cautious, carefully vetting her clients and always meeting them in nice hotels in neighboring cities. Most of her clients were middle-aged businessmen who were looking not only for physical intimacy, but also for intellectual conversation. Her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but that was not unusual. Many clients called from different numbers for confidentiality. "Hello? Good evening. I saw your ad. My name is David." The voice was nervous, uncertain. "I've never done this before. It's my first time." Regina recognized the voice. It was Virgil Clark, a regular customer at the cafe. He gave a false name, but the distinctive hoarseness was unmistakable. "I understand. she said calmly, not betraying her recognition. "Tell me what you're interested in." "I need someone to talk to. About life. About what's going on. Maybe just spend some time with someone who doesn't know me." He paused. "Does that sound stupid?" "Not at all. Many people are looking for just that. The opportunity to be heard without judgment." They agreed to meet on Friday at the Hampton Inn in Toledo, an hour's drive from Cedarville. Regina set the price at $500 for the evening. Virgil, who introduced himself as David, agreed without haggling. After the conversation, Regina sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about the strange coincidence. The man she had talked to during the day about wanting to be someone else had called her that evening as an escort, wanting exactly that, to be with a stranger who didn't know his story. In another part of town, in a house on Elm Street, Virgil Clark sat in his study, holding the phone in his hands. His heart was beating so fast that he was afraid his wife would hear it. Jessica was downstairs helping the children with their homework. "Dad, are you coming to dinner?" his 8-year-old daughter Emily called out. "Just a minute, honey," he replied, trying to make his voice sound normal. Virgil had married Jessica 15 years ago. She was a librarian, a quiet, intelligent woman who had fallen in love with him for his reliability and stability. They had built a good life, a house, children, respectability in the community. But over the past few years, a gap had grown between them. Jessica wanted intimacy, conversation, plans together. Virgil felt suffocated by the routine, by the need to constantly live up to expectations. He loved his family, but sometimes he saw his life as a prison he had built for himself. At dinner, Jessica tried to engage him in conversation about plans for the weekend, but Virgil responded with one-word answers. His mind was preoccupied with his upcoming meeting with the mysterious Scarlett. "You seem distracted," Jessica remarked when the children had gone to their rooms. "What's going on?" "Just tired. Work, budget problems." "We can talk about it. I'm your wife, Virgil." He looked at her, still an attractive woman of 38, with whom he had spent half his adult life. Jessica deserved honesty, deserved a husband who was fully present, but he couldn't give her that. "It's okay, Jess. I just need some time." She nodded, but he saw the pain in her eyes. Jessica knew something was wrong between them, but she didn't understand what it was. Later, when the house was quiet, Virgil lay in bed next to his sleeping wife and thought about the gap between who he should be and who he wanted to be. Tomorrow was Friday, and he would take a step into the unknown. Regina was also awake in her apartment. She stood at the window, looking out at the empty streets of Cedarville, thinking that tomorrow her life might change. Her meeting with Virgil would not be just work. It would be a meeting between two people searching for something they couldn't find in their ordinary lives. But neither of them knew yet what the consequences of that meeting would be. Friday evening at the Hampton Inn in Toledo began for Regina with her usual ritual of preparation. She chose an elegant black dress, subtle makeup, and modest jewelry. Her appearance was meant to inspire confidence without attracting undue attention. At 7 o'clock, she sat in the lobby reading a book and glancing occasionally at the entrance. Virgil appeared at 7:15, looking around nervously. He was wearing his best suit and had clearly spent time getting himself ready. Regina stood up and walked over to him. "David?" she asked quietly. He nodded, and she saw a mixture of fear and relief in his eyes. "Scarlett? Yes. Are you ready to go up?" They were silent in the elevator. Regina could feel his tension. His hands were shaking slightly. His breathing was uneven. She had seen it many times before. Men taking the first step outside their normal lives, both wanting and fearing what was about to happen. The room was standard, a large bed, armchairs by the window, a minibar. Virgil headed straight for the window, clearly unsure of how to behave. "Would you like something to drink?" Regina asked, opening the minibar. "Whiskey, if you have it." She poured him a whiskey and took some water for herself. "Tell me about yourself. What brought you here?" Virgil took a big gulp. "I don't know where to start. I've been married for 15 years. 2 children, work, home, church on Sundays. Everything as it should be. But something's missing?" "Exactly." He looked at her in surprise. "You understand. Many people feel trapped in their own lives. It doesn't make you a bad person." They talked for 2 hours. Virgil told her how he felt invisible in his own home, how his wife took him for granted, how his job drained him of all his energy. Regina listened and asked questions without judgment. "What about you?" he asked finally. "How did you get here?" "It's a long story. Sometimes life forces us to choose between survival and principles. You're not someone who does this because you have a good life." "No, but I'm not complaining. It gives me the freedom to be myself." Nothing physical happened between them that night. Virgil was too tense, and Regina didn't push it. They just talked, and that was exactly what he needed. As he left, Virgil left the envelope with the money on the table. "Can I call you again?" "Sure." The next meeting took place 2 weeks later. This time, Virgil was more relaxed. He brought wine and flowers, which touched Regina. Most clients treated their meetings as strictly business. "I've been thinking about you," he said as they sat down in the chairs by the window. "About what you said about freedom." "And what did you think?" "That I envy you. You can be yourself, and I don't even know who I really am." Regina studied his face. Virgil was an attractive man, but his beauty was clouded by years of suppressing his own desires. "Who would you like to be?" "I don't know. Maybe an artist. I used to draw in college, or a writer, or just a person who can say what he thinks without fear of judgment." "What's stopping you?" "Family, work, reputation. In a small town, everyone knows each other. If I change my life, it will affect everyone. And if you don't change, you'll slowly die inside." Virgil nodded. "That's exactly what's happening." That night, they became closer physically, slowly, carefully, with mutual respect. Regina saw in him not just a client, but a man who desperately needed understanding and acceptance. Meanwhile, in Cedarville, Jessica Clark noticed a change in her husband's behavior. Virgil began staying late at work more often, talking about unscheduled meetings with clients. Twice a month, he would leave for Toledo on business and return late at night. "Mom, why is Dad acting so strange?" Emily asked one evening as she and Jessica were preparing dinner. "What do you mean, dear?" "He's here, but he's not here. It's like he's thinking about something else." Jessica stopped, holding a knife for cutting vegetables in her hands. The child's words spoke the truth that she herself was afraid to admit. "Dad works a lot. He's tired. But he wasn't like that before. He used to play with us and watch movies." Jessica hugged her daughter. "Everything will be fine. Sometimes adults go through difficult periods." But she herself was far from sure that everything would be fine. In recent months, Virgil had become distant and distracted. He answered questions, but didn't listen to the answers. At night, he lay next to her, but he seemed 1,000 miles away. Jessica began to suspect that her husband was having an affair. She checked his pockets, his browser history, his credit card bills. All she found were records of a few trips to Toledo and receipts from restaurants, but no suspicious phone calls, no messages, no traces of perfume or lipstick. One evening, when Virgil said he would be late again, Jessica decided to check. She called the factory and found out that he had left at his usual time. The lie was confirmed, but her understanding of what was going on was no clearer. At the Main Street Cafe, Regina noticed a change in Virgil's behavior. He started coming in more often, staying longer, and their conversations became more personal. She realized that he was beginning to see their relationship as something more than professional services. "Regina," he said one morning when there were few customers in the cafe. "Can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Do you have someone? I mean, a man in your life?" Regina carefully wiped the cups. "No, why do you ask?" "You just seem lonely. A beautiful, intelligent woman like you shouldn't be alone. Sometimes loneliness is a choice, not a punishment. But don't you want someone who truly understands you?" Regina looked at him intently. Virgil wasn't talking about her. He was talking about himself. Understanding is rare. Most people only see what they want to see. Yes, but when you meet someone who sees the real you, it changes everything. After that conversation, Regina realized that the situation was getting complicated. Virgil was starting to confuse their professional relationship with personal feelings. It was dangerous for both of them. Their meetings became regular, every 2 weeks at the same hotel. Virgil always brought gifts, books he thought she would like, good wine, sometimes flowers. He talked about his dreams, about how he saw his life if he could start over. "You know what's strange?" he said once, lying next to her in bed. "I feel more like myself with you than with people I've known my whole life. That's because I don't judge you. I have no expectations of who you should be. I wish it could always be like this." Regina turned to him. "Virgil, you do realize that this isn't real life, right? This is a refuge, a time outside of time. But you have a family, responsibilities." "How do you know my name?" he asked, surprised. Regina realized she had made a mistake. "You mentioned it during one of our conversations." "No, I always said my name was David." Tension hung in the air. Regina got out of bed, throwing on her robe. "Maybe I got it mixed up. I have a lot of clients." "No." Virgil stood up too. "You know who I am. Where from?" Regina realized she couldn't hide the truth any longer. "I work at the Main Street Cafe in Cedarville. You're a regular customer." Virgil turned pale. "My God, Regina? Is that you?" "Yes." "But why didn't you tell me?" "Because it would have broken the rules. Customers have a right to anonymity." Virgil sat down on the edge of the bed, holding his head in his hands. "I don't know what to think. All this time you knew who I was. You knew about my family. I never used that information against you. But you knew, and you kept seeing me. Yes, because I saw that you needed help. You needed someone who would listen without judgment." Virgil was silent for a few minutes. "What now?" "That's up to you. We can stop seeing each other if you're uncomfortable." "No," he said quickly. "I don't want this to end. You're the only good thing in my life." "Virgil, be careful. Don't confuse gratitude with something more." "But what if it is more? What if I've fallen in love with you?" Regina felt a chill run down her spine. "Then we're both in danger." After that conversation, their relationship changed. Virgil became more demanding, wanting to see her more often. He talked about the future, about how they could be together if circumstances were different. Regina realized that the situation was getting out of control. Virgil was starting to see their relationship as real, forgetting that it was just business. She saw in his eyes not just desire, but hope for salvation from a life that didn't satisfy him. Rumors spread quickly in Cedarville. Pastor Michael Stone noticed a change in the behavior of one of his parishioners. Virgil Clark, who used to attend Sunday services regularly with his family, now often skipped them under various pretexts. "Jessica," the pastor said after the service, approaching the woman. "How's Virgil? We haven't seen him in a while." "He's been working a lot," Jessica replied, but there was uncertainty in her voice. "You know how it is." "Of course, but if you need help, my door is always open. Sometimes family problems require spiritual guidance." Jessica nodded but said nothing more. She wasn't ready to discuss her suspicions, even with the pastor. In the last few weeks of their second month together, Regina noticed that Virgil was becoming more possessive. He was becoming jealous of other clients she might have, even though she never discussed her work with him. "Tell me the truth," he said one day. "Am I the only one? That's none of your business. But I'm in love with you. Doesn't that make our relationship special? Virgil, you pay me for my time. No more, no less." "How can you be so cold? After everything we've been through?" Regina knew it was time to end it. "I think we should stop seeing each other." "What? No, you can't do that." "I can and I have to. This is getting too complicated." Virgil grabbed her hand. "Please don't do this. You're all I have." "You have a family. You have a life." "A life I hate." Regina pulled her hand away. "Then change it, but don't use me as a crutch." That evening, Virgil drove away angry and desperate. Regina knew she would never see him again, but she couldn't have imagined that his despair would take a completely different turn. After breaking up with Regina, Virgil Clark spent a sleepless night pacing around the house like a caged animal. Jessica was asleep in the next room. The children were snoring quietly in their beds, and he stood at the window of his study, looking out at the empty street and trying to understand what was happening to his life. Over the past few months, Regina had become more than just an escort to him. She was the only person who listened to him without judgment, understood his needs, and accepted him for who he was. Now, she wanted to leave, and it felt like a death sentence. The next day, Virgil arrived at the Main Street Cafe earlier than usual. Regina was standing behind the counter, preparing morning coffee. When she saw him, a flash of concern crossed her eyes. "Good morning," she said neutrally, as she did with all her customers. "Regina, we need to talk." "This isn't the place for this." "Then where? You refuse to see me like you used to." Regina looked around to make sure no one could hear them. "Virgil," I explained, "this has gone too far." "For whom? For you or for me?" "For both of us. You've started to see our meetings as something they're not." Virgil leaned across the counter. "What if I don't want it to be just business? What if I want something real? Then find it in your family. Or get a divorce and start a new life. But not with me." "Why not with you? We're right for each other." Regina placed a cup of coffee in front of him. "We're right for each other in an artificial situation. This isn't real life." "I don't care about real life. Real life is hell." His voice became too loud. Several customers turned around. Regina gestured for him to calm down. "Drink your coffee and go home to your family," she said quietly but firmly. Virgil drank his coffee in one gulp and left without paying. Regina watched him go, sensing that the situation was becoming dangerous. Over the next few days, Virgil came to the cafe every day, sometimes several times a day. He tried to talk to Regina, begged her to give him another chance, promised to leave his wife. Regina remained professional, but the tension grew. Jessica noticed changes in her husband's behavior. He became irritable, distracted, and often left the house under various pretexts. One evening, she decided to follow him. Virgil got into his car and drove downtown. Jessica followed him at a safe distance. To her surprise, he stopped at the Main Street Cafe, even though it was already closed. He sat in the car for about an hour, staring at the dark windows of the establishment. Jessica realized that the problem was connected to that place, or someone who worked there. The next day, she went to the cafe herself. "Welcome," Regina smiled at her. "What would you like to order?" Jessica studied the young woman. Regina was beautiful, but not provocative. There was something attractive about her, a confidence and understanding that could be seen in her eyes. "A latte, please. And excuse me, do you know my husband? Virgil Clark?" Regina froze for a moment. "Yes, he's a regular customer. Are you Mrs. Clark?" Jessica. "Yes, I'm his wife. Nice to meet you. Your husband always speaks very fondly of his family." Jessica looked closely at Regina, trying to figure out if there was anything more between her and Virgil than a waitress-customer relationship. "Has he been here often lately?" "Quite often. He orders coffee, sometimes something from the pastry case." "Does he talk to you?" Regina chose her words carefully. "Like any waitress, about the weather, about work." Jessica nodded, but something about Regina's behavior seemed insincere to her, too cautious, too calculated. "If you see him, tell him I stopped by. Tell him his wife wants to know what he's been up to." After Jessica left, Regina realized that the situation was becoming critical. Virgil's wife suspected something. She had to act quickly. That evening, Regina called Virgil. "I need to see you, not at the hotel. Meet me at the park on Oak Street at 9 o'clock. Have you changed your mind? Just come." The park was deserted and dark. Regina was waiting on a bench when Virgil approached. "Your wife was at the cafe today," she said without preamble. "What, Jessica?" "She was asking about you, how often you come here." Virgil paled. "What did you tell her?" "What I had to say, that you're a regular customer." "Does she suspect anything?" "Definitely." "Virgil, you have to stop coming to the cafe, ever." "But I can't not see you." "You can and you must. Otherwise, we'll both get hurt." Virgil grabbed her hands. "Regina, please, let's get out of here, together. I'll give up everything and go with you." "You don't understand. I have secrets that could ruin your life." "What secrets? What could be worse than what I already know?" Regina looked at him for a long time. The moment had come when she had to tell him the truth. "Virgil, there's something you need to know about me. Tell me." "I wasn't born a woman." Virgil didn't understand at first. "What do you mean?" "I'm transgender. I was born in a male body and transitioned to female. He was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then he abruptly let go of her hands. What? I transitioned 5 years ago, completely. Hormones, surgery, legal documents. You're a man? No, I'm a woman, but I was born with a male body. Virgil stood up from the bench and began pacing. My God, my God. Virgil, calm down. Calm down. You're telling me I slept with a man. You slept with a woman. With me. No, that's disgusting. It's against nature. Regina stood up too. Virgil, you know me. You know what I'm like. I thought I did. But this is a lie. I didn't lie to you. I am who I say I am. You're a pervert. You made me do it. I didn't make you do anything. You chose this yourself. Virgil stopped in front of her. His eyes were filled with a mixture of disgust, anger, and confusion. All these months, everything we did was real. My feelings for you, your feelings for me, it was all real. Real? How can something built on a lie be real? It's not a lie. It's my life. Virgil grabbed her by the shoulders. How could you? How could you make me feel the way I felt? Let me go. No, you ruined my life. You made me. What? What did I make you? A pervert. How am I supposed to look at myself in the mirror now? Regina broke free from his grip. You're the same person you were yesterday. Nothing has changed. Everything has changed. Everything. Only your perception. But if you can't accept me for who I am, then we're better off apart. Virgil laughed bitterly. Not see each other? You think you can just walk away? After what you've done? What have I done? Fallen in love with you? In love? You don't even know what love is. I do. And I know it's not what you're showing me right now. Virgil stepped away from her, breathing heavily. I need time to think. Think. But remember, I'm the same woman you knew. No, you're not a woman. You never were. With that, he turned and walked toward the park exit. Regina was left alone, realizing she had made a mistake by telling the truth. Virgil didn't come to the cafe for the next few days. Regina hoped he had come to terms with the situation and decided to move on. But she underestimated the depth of his inner conflict. Virgil spent those days in agonizing reflection. He tried to understand what had been happening to him all these months. Was he really in love with a man? What did that say about him? About his sexuality? About his nature? His religious upbringing, conservative views, and small-town lifestyle all conflicted with his feelings for Regina. He couldn't reconcile these two worlds. Jessica noticed that her husband had become even more withdrawn and irritable. He hardly spoke to her or the children and spent his evenings locked in his study. Virgil, what's going on? She asked one evening. Can we talk? Nothing's wrong, leave me alone. I'm your wife. I can see you're suffering. You don't see anything. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Talk to me. Virgil looked at her. The woman he had lived with for 15 years, who had given him children, who had tried to be a good wife. She deserved honesty, but he couldn't give it to her. Some things can't be explained, he said. Everything can be explained, especially between spouses. No, Jessica, not everything. Meanwhile, rumors began to spread around town. Several people noticed that Virgil Clark was spending a lot of time at the Main Street Cafe, staying longer than usual. Someone saw his car in the park late at night. Pastor Michael Stone received an anonymous note warning him that one of his parishioners was behaving inappropriately. The note was vague, but it hinted at infidelity. The pastor decided to talk to Virgil directly. He went to his house on Sunday when he didn't show up for church. Virgil, can I come in? I need to talk to you. Sure, Pastor, come in. They sat down in the living room. Jessica and the children were upstairs. Virgil, I'm worried about you. You've been missing church. You seem troubled. What's going on? Just work, Pastor. A lot of stress. It's more than work. I see pain in your eyes. Virgil looked at the pastor, the man who had baptized his children, blessed his marriage, and was his family's spiritual mentor. Pastor, what would you say about a man who has done something unacceptable? Unacceptable in what sense? In a moral sense, in a religious sense. The Lord forgives all sins if a person repents sincerely. What if the sin is so great that repentance is impossible? That doesn't happen. God's mercy is boundless. Even if a person is perverted? Pastor Stone tensed. Virgil, are you talking about yourself? I'm speaking hypothetically. Any deviation from the natural order can be corrected through prayer and repentance. What if someone made you think that you are not who you should be? Then that person is a tool of the devil, and he must be fought. After the pastor left, Virgil was left with the thought that Regina was a tool of the devil, testing his faith and his nature. The thought began to take root in his mind. The next day, he returned to the cafe. Regina was alone. Her assistant was sick. "Virgil, I thought you weren't coming back." "I need to see you. We need to talk." "Not here. Too many people know us both." "Then let's meet tonight. Same place." "I don't think that's a good idea. Regina, please. I need to understand something." She saw something in his eyes that made her agree. "All right, but this is the last time." "Yes, the last time." The evening of October 15th was cold and rainy. Regina closed the cafe at the usual time and drove home to prepare for her meeting with Virgil. Something about his behavior that afternoon had alarmed her. His voice was too calm, his gaze too intense, his requests to meet too insistent. She changed into a dark jacket and jeans and tucked her hair under the hood. The meeting was to take place in an old industrial area near an abandoned warehouse, a place Virgil had suggested as more private. Regina agreed, even though a voice inside her warned her of danger. The warehouse was on the outskirts of Cedarville, next to the railroad tracks. The place had once been part of a thriving industrial complex, but now most of the buildings stood empty. It was the perfect place for a conversation that no one was supposed to hear. Regina arrived first. She parked her car around the corner from the building and walked to the main entrance. The heavy metal door was ajar. Inside, it smelled of dampness and machine oil. The only light came from street lamps shining through broken windows. 10 minutes later, Virgil appeared. He walked slowly, heavily, like a man carrying an unbearable burden. "You came," he said, stopping a few feet away from her. "I promised, but let's hurry. It's not safe here." "Not safe," he repeated with a bitter smile. "Yes, it's definitely not safe here." Regina studied his face closely in the dim light. Virgil looked exhausted, like a man who hadn't slept for days. His eyes were red, his hands trembling slightly. "Virgil, what did you want to talk about?" "About us. About what happened between us." "I thought we'd already discussed everything." "No. I've been thinking about it for the last few days. Thinking about what you did to me. I didn't do anything to you. We were adults who made a mutual decision." "Mutual?" Virgil laughed. "You deceived me. You made me believe that you were a real woman." "I am a real woman." "No. You were born a man. You had male body parts, which I changed, because they didn't match who I am inside." Virgil began to pace in circles like a caged animal. "You don't understand what they did to me. I was a normal man my whole life. I got married, had children, lived according to God's commandments. And what changed? What changed is that I slept with a man, that I felt what I felt for a man. You felt that for me, for a woman, towards a pervert, towards a man who plays dress-up." Regina felt anger rising in her chest. "I'm not playing anything. This is my life. This is who I am. It's a disease. It's a sin against nature. It's my choice and my right." "Your right?" Virgil stopped in front of her. "And my right to know the truth? My right to choose who I want to be with?" "You chose. You chose to be with me. I chose to be with a woman, a real woman. I'm real." "Shut up," he shouted. "Stop lying. Stop pretending." Regina took a step back. Virgil was on the verge of breaking down, and she realized that the situation was becoming dangerous. "Virgil, calm down. Let's talk calmly." "Calmly? How can I talk calmly when you've ruined my life?" "I didn't ruin your life. You were the one who sought what you found with me. I was looking for a woman, understanding, love, and you got it. From a man in a dress." Those words hit Regina like a slap in the face. "Don't you dare say that." "Why? It's the truth. You're a man who mutilated his body and pretends to be a woman. I'm a woman who corrected nature's mistake." "Nature's mistake?" Virgil laughed hysterically. "The only mistake was meeting you." He took something metal out of his jacket pocket. In the dim light, Regina didn't immediately recognize what it was. "What do you have in your hand?" "A wrench. I took it from the car." Why? To fix the mistake. Regina felt the blood drain from her veins. Virgil, put that down. Do you know what I've been thinking about these past few days? I've been thinking about what I'm going to tell my wife, my children, how I'm going to explain to them that their father slept with you. You don't have to explain anything to them. We can just go our separate ways and forget about each other. Forget? He clenched the wrench in his hand. How can I forget? How can I live knowing that I have this perversion inside me? There's nothing perverse about you. You fell in love with a person. I fell in love with a lie, an illusion, a fantasy. You fell in love with me. You don't exist. Regina is a figment of your imagination. You're Robert who decided to play with dolls. Robert died 5 years ago. I was born in his place. Then I'll kill Regina too. He raised the wrench above his head. Regina tried to run away but tripped over a piece of metal on the floor. She fell, and Virgil was on top of her. Virgil, don't do it. Think of your children. I am thinking of them. I can't let them live with a perverted father. You're not a pervert. You're just a man who fell in love. With a man! With a sick man! The first blow landed on her head. Regina screamed and tried to protect herself with her hands. Please, stop! No, you have to die! You have to disappear! The second blow was harder. The third. Regina stopped moving. Virgil stood over the body, breathing heavily. The wrench fell from his hand and clattered onto the concrete floor. The silence of the warehouse was broken only by his ragged breathing and the sound of rain on the roof. The reality of what had happened did not immediately register. At first, he just stood there, staring at the motionless body. Then he knelt down and checked her pulse. There was none. My God, he whispered. What have I done? Panic gripped him. He grabbed the wrench, wiped it on his jacket, and shoved it back into his pocket. Then he looked around, trying to see if he had left any traces. Regina's car was parked around the corner. The keys were in her pocket. Virgil took them, started the car, and drove it to an industrial area on the other side of town, where he left it in an abandoned parking lot. Returning to the warehouse on foot, he examined the scene once more. The body lay deep inside the building where it could remain undiscovered for several days. That should be enough time to come up with an alibi. Virgil arrived home at 10:30. Jessica was reading in bed. You're late, she said without looking up from her book. I was delayed with paperwork. Dinner is in the refrigerator. Thank you. I'm not hungry. He went into the bathroom and stood under the hot shower for a long time, trying to wash away what had happened. But the bloodstains on the shower head wouldn't wash away. Regina's body was found 3 days later. A homeless man named Charlie Donovan was looking for a place to sleep and wandered into an abandoned warehouse. At first he thought it was a mannequin or a doll, but then he realized the truth and ran to the nearest phone. A patrol car was the first to arrive at the scene. Officers Dan Miller and Tom Brooks cordoned off the area and called for detectives. An hour later, Detective Sarah Connors arrived. Sarah was relatively new to Cedarville, having moved there a year and a half ago from Cleveland, where she had worked in the homicide division. Serious crimes were rare in the small town, and this was her first murder case in her new town. Detective Connors was a 35-year-old woman of average height with short dark hair and alert gray eyes. She was used to her male colleagues being skeptical at first, but they quickly changed their minds when they saw her at work. What do we have? She asked Officer Miller. A woman, approximately 25 to 30 years old, multiple head injuries, blunt object, possibly a hammer or wrench. Sarah put on gloves and approached the body. Regina was lying on her side, facing the wall. Blood had dried on the floor around her head. Her clothes were intact, with no signs of sexual assault. Any ID? Not yet. No ID on her, but we found her car in an industrial parking lot 2 miles from here. The license plate is registered to Regina Morgan. Sarah knew that name. The waitress from the cafe on Main Street? That's right. Pretty girl. Everyone in town knew her. The detective carefully examined the crime scene. There were no signs of a struggle except for the spot where the body had been lying. This suggested that the attack had been quick and unexpected, or that the victim knew the killer and did not expect to be attacked. Who found the body? A homeless man, Charlie Donovan. We questioned him. He's clean. He was looking for a place to sleep. Where is he now? At the station, waiting. Sarah took a few more photos and notes, then headed to the station to investigate the case further. The Cedarville police station was a small building on Main Street. Detective Connors settled into her office with the file on Regina Morgan. There wasn't much information. 28 years old, no criminal record, worked at the Main Street Cafe for 3 years, lived alone in an apartment above a hair salon. Charlie Donovan turned out to be a 60-year-old man with a gray beard and nervous eyes. He told his story simply. He was looking for shelter from the rain, went into the warehouse, found the body, and called the police. "Did you know Miss Morgan?" Sarah asked. "I saw her at the cafe. She was a nice girl. She sometimes gave me free coffee." "Did you notice anyone suspicious near the warehouse in the last few days?" "No, ma'am. There's usually no one there. That's why I went there." After talking to Charlie, Sarah drove to the Main Street Cafe. The place was closed, with a note on the door saying, "Closed due to family circumstances." She talked to the neighbors and learned that Regina was a quiet, friendly girl who kept to herself. No one knew anything about her personal life, had seen her with any men, or heard of any problems. "She was a mystery," said Mary Wilson, the owner of a hair salon. "Sweet, but very private, never talked about her family or her past." "And in the last few days, did you notice anything unusual about her behavior?" "No, nothing out of the ordinary, although she did seem tense in the last few weeks, like she was afraid of something." That was the first clue. Sarah wrote down the information and decided to dig deeper into Regina's last days. That evening, the detective sat in her office, studying photos from the crime scene. Something about the case bothered her. The murder was too personal, too emotional for a random attack. The multiple blows to the head suggested rage, a personal motive. Sarah made a list of questions that needed answers. Who saw Regina last? Who was she seeing? Did she have any enemies? Did she do anything besides working at the cafe? The answers to these questions should lead to the killer. But Sarah didn't know yet that the case would turn out to be much more complicated than it seemed at first glance. The next morning, an article about the murder appeared in the Cedarville Daily. The whole town was in shock. Everyone knew and loved Regina. Who could want to hurt such a sweet girl? Virgil Clark read the newspaper at breakfast, trying to look calm. Jessica and the children discussed the tragedy. "Poor Regina," said Jessica. "She was so nice. Who could have done this?" "Probably some junkie," replied Virgil, without looking up from the newspaper. "There have been a lot of strange people wandering around town lately. I can't believe this happened here in Cedarville. There are bad people everywhere." Emily, his 8-year-old daughter, asked, "Daddy, could a bad man come to our house?" Virgil looked at his daughter and felt his heart sink. "No, sweetheart. Daddy will protect you." But deep down, he knew that a bad man was already in their home. The bad man was sitting at their table, reading the newspaper about the crime he had committed. Detective Connors spent the next 2 days methodically investigating the life of Regina Morgan. She interviewed all the cafe employees, regular customers, and neighbors. The picture that emerged was contradictory. Everyone knew Regina as a friendly waitress, but no one knew her well. "She was a professional," said Lisa Harris, an assistant at the cafe. "She was always smiling and remembered what people liked to order, but she never talked about her personal life." "What about the customers? Did anyone come in particularly often?" Sarah asked. "Lots of people. Mr. Miller every morning, a group of workers from the factory, housewives with children." Lisa paused. "Although Virgil Clark has been coming in a lot lately." "Virgil Clark?" "Yes, the manager at the factory, a married man with 2 children. He used to come in occasionally, but in recent months he's been coming almost every day." Sarah wrote down the name. "How did they interact?" "Normally, although sometimes it seemed like he was staying longer than necessary to order coffee." That was the second clue. The detective decided to talk to Virgil Clark. The Cedarville Auto Parts factory was located on the outskirts of town. Sarah found Virgil in his office, a small room overlooking the production floor. When she introduced herself, he visibly tensed up. "Detective, is something wrong?" "I'm investigating the murder of Regina Morgan. I understand you were a regular customer at the cafe." "Yes, I stopped by for coffee sometimes." Virgil avoided her gaze. "How often?" "I don't know exactly. A couple of times a week, maybe." "The cafe employee says you came almost every day in the last few months." Virgil paused for a moment. Maybe. I don't keep track of my coffee runs. How would you describe your relationship with Miss Morgan? We had no relationship. She poured coffee, I paid money. Did you ever meet her outside the cafe? Of course not. Why do you need this? Sarah studied his face. Virgil was nervous, sweating despite the coolness of the office. Where were you on the evening of October 15th, between 7 and 11? Working late. Then I went home. Can anyone confirm that? The security guard, I guess. And my wife knows I got home late. Sarah wrote down the information. If you remember anything else about Miss Morgan, give me a call. After the detective left, Virgil sat in his office trying to calm down. He knew that sooner or later the police would come after him. He needed to come up with a more convincing version of events. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her investigation. She examined Regina's financial records and discovered something strange. Her income was significantly higher than a waitress's salary. There were regular large cash deposits in her bank account. Where did she get all this money? The detective wondered aloud. The answer came unexpectedly. While checking the internet browser history on Regina's computer, Sarah found traces of activity on Escort websites. The profile Scarlet had photos that clearly belonged to Regina, although her face was partially hidden. This changed the entire picture of the case. Regina Morgan was leading a double life. During the day, she was a modest waitress, and in the evenings, she provided escort services. Sarah contacted the website administrators and obtained a list of clients who had contacted Scarlet in recent months. Most used anonymous phone numbers, but technical expertise helped trace some of them. One number belonged to Virgil Clark. So, Sarah said to her partner, Detective James Riley, our family man Clark was a client of the victim. That changes things. We have a motive. Yes, but what exactly? He could have found out something compromising. She could have blackmailed him. Or maybe he just didn't want his wife to find out about his relationship with a prostitute. Sarah obtained a search warrant for Virgil's home and car. The next morning, a team of officers arrived at the house on Elm Street. Jessica opened the door and turned pale when she saw the police. What's going on? Mrs. Clark, we have a search warrant. Where is your husband? At work. But why? We're investigating the murder of Regina Morgan. Jessica sank into a chair in the hallway. You think Virgil, but that's impossible. The search of the house yielded no results, but a wrench with dried bloodstains was found in the trunk of Virgil's car. Forensic tests confirmed that the blood belonged to Regina Morgan. Virgil was arrested right at the factory. When the detectives read him his rights, he did not resist. He even seemed relieved. In the interrogation room, Virgil initially denied his guilt, but when Sarah presented the evidence, phone records, bank transfers, blood on the wrench, he broke down. She tricked me, he said quietly. I thought she was a normal woman. What do you mean? Virgil was silent for a long time, then told the whole story. About his encounters with the escort Scarlet, about how he found out she was Regina from the cafe, about their last conversation when she confessed to being transgender. I didn't plan to kill her, he said. But when she told me the truth, I couldn't take it. Do you understand? All these months I thought I was in love with a woman, and it turned out what? That I'm a pervert, that I slept with a man. Sarah shook her head. Virgil, Regina was a woman. Transgender, but a woman. No, she was born a man. She had a woman's soul in the wrong body, and she fixed it. That's against nature, against God. And murder isn't against God? Virgil fell silent. For the first time in several days, he thought about what he had really done. The news of Virgil Clark's arrest shook Cedarville. No one could believe that a quiet family man was capable of murder. But when the details of the case became known, the town was divided. Some condemned Virgil for the murder. Others whispered that Regina was to blame, that she had deceived people, that it was unfair to men. Pastor Michael Stone preached about the sins of the modern world and the temptations of the devil. He didn't name names, but everyone knew who he was talking about. When people stray from the natural order, said the pastor, it leads to tragedy. We must pray for the souls of the lost and remember God's commandments. Jessica Clark found herself at the center of the scandal. Neighbors shunned her. Children at school teased her children. She was forced to take a leave of absence from the library and considered moving away. "I didn't know," she insisted to anyone who would listen. "I had no idea my husband was leading a double life." But people looked at her with suspicion. How could a wife not know that her husband was regularly seeing a prostitute? The trial of Virgil Clark began 6 months later. The defense tried to present the case as a crime of passion, provoked by deception on the part of the victim. The prosecution insisted on first-degree premeditated murder. Detective Connors testified about the investigation. She described the methodical way in which Virgil had concealed the evidence and arranged to meet in an isolated location. "The defendant did not act in blind rage," she said. "He planned this meeting, chose a place where no one would see them, and brought a weapon with him." Virgil's lawyer objected. "My client was the victim of a cruel deception. Regina Morgan hid the fundamental truth about her nature from him." "Nature?" the prosecutor asked. "What does the victim's nature have to do with her right to life?" The trial lasted 2 weeks. Witnesses testified about the character of both parties. Regina was remembered as a kind, hard-working woman. Virgil was remembered as a model family man who broke down under the pressure of circumstances. Experts explained to the jury what transgenderism is, how the transition process works, and why some people make this decision. Many were hearing about it for the first time in their lives. In the end, the jury returned a verdict of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced Virgil to 25 years in prison. "You took the life of a young woman," the judge said as he handed down the sentence. "It doesn't matter what feelings you had about her past. No one has the right to decide who is worthy of life and who is not." After the trial, Detective Connors stood on the steps of the courthouse, watching Virgil being led away in handcuffs. Jessica Clark sat on a bench nearby, crying. Sarah approached her. "Mrs. Clark, I'm sorry." "He wasn't a bad man," Jessica said through her tears. "He was just lost. We all get lost sometimes, but not everyone chooses violence as a way out." "What will happen to the children? How will they live with the fact that their father is a murderer?" "Time heals, and they are not responsible for their father's actions." A year after the trial, Jessica and her children moved to another state. The Main Street Cafe changed owners and its name. In Cedarville, people tried to forget the tragedy, but the scars remained. Detective Connors often thought about the case. It showed her how dangerous prejudice could be, how fear of the unknown could turn an ordinary person into a murderer. Regina Morgan was buried in the town cemetery. A simple headstone appeared on her grave with the inscription, "Regina Morgan, loving daughter and friend." None of her relatives came to the funeral. The family had disowned her during the move. But a few people did come to say goodbye. Lisa from the cafe brought flowers. Old Frank Miller placed a cup of coffee on the grave. Charlie Donovan, who found the body, left a note. "Thank you for your kindness." The last time Detective Connors visited Regina's grave, she thought about how every person deserves the right to be themselves, to love and be loved. Regina Morgan found the courage to live according to her true nature, but society was not ready to accept her. Virgil Clark was serving his sentence in state prison. For the first few years, he was full of anger and self-justification. But gradually, working with a prison psychologist, he began to understand that his actions were unjustifiable. The Regina Morgan case was a turning point for Cedarville. The town was forced to confront the realities of the modern world, with questions of identity and tolerance. Not everyone learned their lesson, but many began to think about the price people pay for the right to be themselves.